Glenn Greenwald, a reporter of The Intercept, has been on the show many times. He was charged in Brazil yesterday. He's been accused of committing a series of crimes for printing text messages between government leaders as part of an expose on official corruption there. Now, if convicted, he faces a long term in some of the harshest prisons in the world. He could die in them. Greenwald is an American citizen. He could probably find a way to fly back to New York tomorrow if he wanted, but he's refusing. He's pledging to stay in Brazil and fight, and we're not surprised by that. At the height of the Russia hysteria, Greenwald stood virtually alone on the American left in calling the witch hunt what it was. Dozens of times he came to this channel to say what he thought was true at great personal cost to himself. Former friends hated him for breaking ranks. They denounced him. They tried to get him bounced out of his job. Even now, as he faces jail, some are still attacking him. But he bulled forward anyway because he thought it was the right thing to do. He's that tough and that self-directed. That's something to admire, and we do admire it. Glenn Greenwald, we are rooting for you tonight.
Besides the assertion that Russiagate was a witch hunt, which I disagree with Tucker and half disagree with Greenwald on, I thought it was insanely overblown and unprovable outside of financials, while I had a differing opinion on Ukraine, which I thought was super clear-cut. But anyway, I thought that was a very moving moment by Tucker Carlson. Never thought I'd say that, but he does deserve credit for that. He's a lot smarter than anyone else on his network and actually has evolved into being sort of a Rand Paul, Mike Lee type, deeply wrong on most issues, but skeptical of government power at least, and the money spent on endless wars. He's had Greenwald on his program multiple times, and I didn't see any other cable host except Chris Hayes, who is by far the best one we've got, tweet out in support of Glenn, even though they're all clutching their pearls about the free press under Trump. Bernie, rightly so in many ways. Bernie Warren and Tulsi Gabbard have sent out supportive tweets to Glenn. However, Tucker did leave out some pretty important context. More on that in a minute. But for everyone who doesn't know, this is what's happening to the journalist Glenn Greenwald, who won the Pulitzer for his groundbreaking reporting on the NSA leaks with Edward Snowden as his source. Greenwald has recently been reporting on prosecutorial misconduct in Brazil, exposing the political motives at the heart of the prosecution of Brazil's popular former president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. His stories ultimately led to the ex-politician's release from prison. The current Brazilian government is accusing Greenwald of helping, guiding, and encouraging hackers who obtained the Brazilian officials' text messages that informed his reporting. But the charges are suspect, for starters, because Greenwald's stories embarrassed the very same prosecutors who came after him by revealing the political motives for Lula's prosecution. Additionally, Brazilian federal authorities have looked into his reporting and found no misconduct. These new charges come after there's been no new evidence, just a new desire by those same corrupt prosecutors to go after Glenn after they've been embarrassed. And that brings me to what Tucker conveniently missed, that's because they've been enabled to do so by a right-wing authoritarian president of Brazil who was able to take over because of the corrupt prosecution and imprisonment of the enormously popular leftist president Lula da Silva, of which Glenn was reporting on. That was a huge central part of why he's being charged with these crimes, because of the leftist president being wrongly imprisoned. In Carlson's segment, there was no mention of who is threatening Greenwald with death in prison. Bolsonaro, who said this week that the American journalist could be jailed in Brazil. So far, the Trump administration has been mum on Greenwald's persecution. Given Trump's sympathies towards Bolsonaro, that's not surprising. But Carlson's defense of Greenwald rings somewhat hollow, even hypocritical, to use a word that Carlson wields as his sharpest weapon, when he ignores the culpability of Brazil's far-right government. And that's the reality. So while I'm thrilled that Carlson is defending Glenn, his credibility here can only go so far, because the reason Glenn is in this position is because of fascism. Bolsonaro is the guy who said he would kill his son if he were gay. Glenn is gay, right? And he's faced so many homophobic attacks, him and his partner. Bolsonaro basically sees this presidency too in a soft coup, colluding with the corrupt prosecutors. He's an old school Cold War style fascist, much more ideological than Trump, and potentially even more dangerous. I mean, he's burning the Amazon for industry as we speak. He's allowing them to do so. And a condemnation of the result of his presidency without a condemnation of the root cause isn't enough. To be perfectly honest, Tucker.